Hello, all you friends, you neighbors, you family, you citizens of the world. I'm Michael James. I'm here in Chicago, and I'm bringing you another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This one is for the week of October 22nd. It's during the era of the pandemic still, and we want you to encourage people to start wearing their masks again in a lot of places. This is actually number 123 of our Zoom Heartland from Home or Heartland at Home that have been recorded since the beginning of the pandemic. A little information, we are recording this on Wednesday the 19th. So we don't have the most up-to-date news, but we do have a number of interesting things to share. And we will have two guests. We're going to have Pat Handlin, who is a lawyer who's been involved with the Dakota Access Pipeline cases, et cetera. And Bill Paige, a longtime Rogers Parker, now living in Thailand, back here on a visit, going to share his thoughts, his observations. So we like to start off with some good things. And for me, in the last week, I had two old friends that gave nice talks that I got to hear. The first was Flint Taylor from the People's Law Office talking to my class, my DePaul activism class, last Thursday. And he filled all the students in and reminded me about the horrific events around the assassination of Fred Hampton and Mark Clark and the Black Panther Party. He talked a little bit about his book, The Torture Machine, which is about John Burge and police torture of numerous people here in Chicago. And then we're going to have, then I actually went to the book signing for Helen Schiller. Her new book from Haymarket is called Daring to Struggle, Daring to Win. And there were about 100 people there from the Intercommunal Survival Committee. Congressman Chuy Garcia was there. A lot of activists were there, a lot of old-time friends. It was a great event, and it's really a good book. And we did have Helen on the Live from the Heartland show back on August 27th of this year. So if you want to hear her talking about it, go to youtube.com/heartlandmedia and then type in Helen Schiller, and it will come up, I believe. A little bit around the world. A couple of weeks back, we had Brian Meir down in Brazil talking about the election in Brazil coming up. And I looked today, I asked him to send me an update, and I didn't get that yet, but I did find online from yesterday in Reuters, Brazilian presidential candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva saw his lead over the incumbent president Jair Bolsonaro slightly drop ahead of the October 30th runoff vote. And let me see. On Monday, Lula's support reached 50% versus 43% for Bolsonaro. It was 51 to 42, so it changed by 1 point. We'll see what happens. On another front, on a real serious note, I want to call your attention to the crisis in Brazil. I heard a really detailed report on severe hunger in Haiti. I was on NPR this week. Haiti's been hit by earthquakes, hurricanes, gangs, hunger, and now cholera. So pay attention to it because we hear a lot about the Ukraine and the support for the Ukraine struggles around the world. But Haiti always seems to get run over, undermined, forgotten. And remember, they did have a president, an ex-priest named Aristide, who the U.S. didn't take kindly to. And the U.S. has not been good on Haiti for a long time. Sometimes we have an in memoriam, but I'm really glad to say none of my friends that have passed that I know about in the last week. We like to cover what's going on in union organizing, and there was a union election for Amazon upstate New York, and they lost that. So far, the union has won one. Amazon has won two, and there is one that is too close to call, and we'll keep you filled in. On the sports front, we're looking forward to the Bulls' start this week. We're sorry to hear that Zach LaVine, who has a big contract and is a key member of the team, is not playing at least in the first two games. we'll see how that goes. And one of my favorite players on the White Sox was Jose Abreu. He was one of 4 starting Cubans on the Sox team this year. And while we fell out at the end, we had some good shots at it. Jose Abreu did not play the last game, and there's a lot of talk about him not coming back to the Sox, where he said he wanted to return to. And I did find that the Cubs are interested in Abreu. That would be interesting, rooting for the Cubs because of Abreu. But I do root for the Cubs when they're not playing the White Sox. Okay. On this day in history, this day being the day this show is broadcast on WLUW 88.7 and WLUW.org for streaming on the Saturday, the 22nd. In that day in history, in 1962, President John F. Kennedy alerted Americans to the Cuban Missile Crisis, declaring a naval blockade to prevent further missile shipments to the island country 90 miles off the coast. And those shipments were coming from the old Soviet Union. A reefer report. As many of you know, President Biden has asked the state governors to pardon all the people with misdemeanor drug charges. He's done that on a federal level, but according to the Indianapolis Star, Governor Eric Holcomb said he won't issue a blanket pardons for those with state-level charges of possession of marijuana, despite President Joe Biden's request for the governors to do so. And just a little bit more on the reefer report, I saw this, Jackson County, Oregon. A truck pulling a cargo trailer drew the suspicions of police in Southern Oregon after the driver reportedly committed several traffic violations. An Oregon State Police trooper pulled over the driver on State Route 62 near Eagle Point about 3 p.m. on October 12th. The driver consented to a search, which uncovered approximately 350 garbage bags of dried, processed marijuana weighing just shy of 9,000 pounds. Manuel Plasencia, 30, from Turlock, California, was issued a criminal citation, or more than one, and released from custody. Apparently, Southern Oregon has been dealing with an overwhelming number of illegal marijuana grows over the past few years. It is a state that does have, I believe, legal marijuana. And here in the 49th Ward, there's a lot going on. Those of you who listen to the show regularly know that Maria Haddon, our alderwoman, gave a very detailed report last week, and you can find that if you go to youtube.com/Heartland Media and go to last week's show or type in Maria Haddon's name. And I think that will be it for our little roundup of information. And we will take a short break, music or otherwise, and we'll be right back with our first guest. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned here on the left end of your dial. And if you miss it any time on a Saturday morning, go to youtube.com/Heartland Media/videos. Okay, Michael James here in Chicago. Be right back. Welcome back to the Live from the Heartland show for the week of October 22nd in the year 2022. And we're about to bring on our next guest, Pat Handlin, who is a longtime progressive lawyer. She was on this show not too long ago, but I was not able to find the exact date. But she talked a lot about the Dakota Access Pipeline and the protests that were going on around it. I asked her to come back and talk about where that is all at, the Dakota Access Pipeline and Native American treaties and Native American water rights, Native water protectors. Let me just give you a little background on the Dakota Access Pipeline. It started in early 2016 as a grassroots opposition to the construction of Energy Transfer Partners Dakota Access Pipeline in the northern U.S. The pipeline runs from the Bakken oil fields in western North Dakota to southern Illinois, crossing beneath the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers, as well as under parts of Lake Oahe near the Standing Rock Indian Reservation. Many members of the Standing Rock tribe and surrounding communities consider the pipeline to be a serious threat to the region's water. The construction also directly threatens ancient burial grounds and cultural sites of historic importance. With that background, let me bring on the one, the only Pat Handlin, and good morning to you, Pat.
Good morning, Michael. How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to have you back on the show. I've been bugging you for a while, and you said you were getting ready. So
Yes.
Give us a little overview on your involvement with the Dakota Access Pipeline and where things stand with that now. And then we'll broaden the conversation to Native American rights, protecting water, other pipelines, and bringing it all back here, Lake Michigan, et cetera.
Oh, yeah. Well, I ended up involved because I went to Standing Rock. When the camp, it was called Ochedi Shakowin, the 7 council fires, the camp protesting against the Dakota Access Pipeline. And I went and volunteered in the legal tent. And then after that, I volunteered as one of 32 lawyers to represent over 800 water protectors, primarily indigenous water protectors, arrested protesting that pipeline. And those cases went on for from 2016 to 2019. There are still some civil lawsuits pending against, for the brutality. The law enforcement was incredibly brutal to water protectors there. The pipeline was constructed with a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers that a federal judge in Washington, D.C. said was done improperly, that they didn't consider everything the Army Corps of Engineers should have considered. They have jurisdiction of the pipeline going under the Missouri River. It goes under the Missouri, a mile from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation where they get their water. And it impacts other reservations also there. And the water access from that river, actually millions of people get their water from that river. But so the court determined that the permit was illegal, was void, ordered the pipeline to shut down, but the appellate court allowed the pipeline to continue operating and ordered the Army Corps of Engineers to review whether or not it should have allowed the permit. And that's happening now. They're reviewing that all these years later, still operating. But yeah, so that was Energy Transfer Partners. Also, bringing it back to home, there's another pipeline. Actually, I think it's the original pipeline by a company called Enbridge, which is a Canadian company. And when I was on last, we talked about Line 3, I think. Line 3 is in northern Minnesota. And their water protectors went there too, indigenous-led protests. I represented some water protectors from Chicago, along with a couple of other lawyers here. And, these great, wonderful, courageous young people who are, putting their bodies on the line. Attaching themselves to construction equipment, risking jail, to take a stand in support of indigenous rights and water. All of our survival, really. We're racing the clock here with climate change. So Enbridge is a Canadian company.
Before we go to Enbridge, let me ask you a couple more things about Dakota Access. Okay. Wasn't the original line, if it had been a different route, it would have gone through some other big town, Bismarck. And they changed it so it wouldn't go through Bismarck. So they protected a largely white population at the expense of Native people who historically lived in that area.
Exactly. And it goes through what's called ceded territory. I'm sorry, unceded territory, territory that actually was never treated to the federal government. That it's been recognized in case law that that land still really does belong to the Sioux, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, traditionally called the Lakota. But anyway, so it went through like, sacred territory and just literally destroyed some important places. Because constructing a pipeline is, it's wide and deep and can do a lot of damage. So yes, you are correct.
Yeah.
That the original.
Has the new Secretary of the Interior, who is a Native person, has she been involved in any of this? Is she helpful in any way?
Oh, she's done some remarkable things. I cannot say, I don't think her jurisdiction really impacts the permitting for pipelines. That's more our neighbor Pete Buttigieg, and the president and the local state departments of natural resources and the Federal Army Corps of Engineers. So those are, the president has jurisdiction because there's a presidential permit required for pipelines to cross the border with Canada. And so that's necessary. But other than that, like in North Dakota, it was the Department of Natural Resources or other permitting bodies and the Army Corps of Engineers.
One last thing, two things. Yeah. I want to ask you, I had heard something about a pipeline got stopped. Were there any decisions around Dakota Access about stopping it? It's running full tilt now?
It is, but it shouldn't be. A judge did order it to shut down, a federal district judge in DC, but the federal appellate court said he was right that that it's operating without a proper permit, that the permit was invalid because the Army Corps of Engineers didn't do their proper evaluation of whether it should go under the Missouri River, but the appellate court allowed it to continue.
One other thing,
and so did the Army Corps of Engineers.
One other thing was that you talked about the brutality, and I remember it. You want to just talk a little more about the way people were treated, and we'll sum up the Dakota Access if you think there's any hope for reversing the decision, or it's kind of going to be a done deal now.
No, I don't think it's a done deal at all. But unfortunately, I don't think the Army Corps of Engineers is any more careful in how they analyze things, or I really disagreed, as did obviously the federal judge, with their decision to begin with, and the quality of it, the substance, but it's not a done deal. There's the potential for litigation. And I forgot the second part of your question. Oh, the brutality. They were just horrendous to people. They arrested, I said, over 800, like 824 people. They would make people strip down to one layer of clothing in the buses. They'd transport them in really bitter cold weather hours away to remote jails in North Dakota. They had people they had dog kennels in the basement of the jail in Morton County, North Dakota, where they would put people. They would, there's a guy who, they broke bones. They didn't kill anybody miraculously, fortunately, but they did do some pretty serious damage to people.
Okay, well, we'll have you back on if there's any change in that situation.
Okay.
Let's come home to the Midwest here a little bit.
Yeah.
There is an article, let me just tell you, in the Tribune on the 16th by Tanya Turnham, and it basically says it talks about Enbridge, and it talks about the big project that they want to do, where they bring their pipelines under both Great Lakes and the Mississippi, and 60 million people get their drinking water from all of these waterways and the lakes. And any oil spill would be really terrible. So give us the story on Enbridge, and then I'll end up telling you about all the people who were involved at this meeting in Evanston recently to bring people's attention to Enbridge.
That's great. That's great that people are doing that. So Enbridge is a Canadian company. They bring oil from Alberta, Canada, what's called the tar sands. That is the dirtiest oil on the planet. The highest concentration of carbon emissions come from that oil. And they actually started the pipelines that are in northern Minnesota. They go through Wisconsin to the shores of Lake Superior, and they go under the Straits of Mackinac, which is where Lake Michigan and Lake Huron meet. It's a very unique place. It's a so I did a little research, and the more research I did, the madder I got that they even want to do this. So the pipelines are like, Michigan gave a permit for the line 5 in 1953. So these are old.
Yeah. More dangerous.
The one that goes under the Straits of Mackinac now, there are two. One, it like splits in two. 4 miles of it is exposed. And there have been 2 incidents recently in the last few years where it was probably a something hanging from a barge either knocked the pipeline itself or a structure holding it that could have resulted in a spill. And but for, Providence would have. And so the problem with the Straits of Mackinac is that it's a complex system of currents, really forceful currents that I'm looking. It's there. So the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has a Great Lakes. It's called GERL. I forgot what the E stands for. Anyway, a Great Lakes study lab that says the complex, unique, and fast-moving currents would cause materials in the water to disperse more quickly than in other locations in the Great Lakes. And, that's an area where that's sacred to the Anishinaabe, who it's a tribe from time immemorial, or more than one tribe in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. And there's the leaders, there are 12 federally recognized tribal nations of Michigan. They make up the Three Fires Confederacy of the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi, which is a familiar name for Chicago, are all familiar names for Chicagoans. They sent a letter on November 4th, 2021 to Biden, asking him to assist in decommissioning Line 5. And the Bay Mills Indian community, which is in northern Michigan, which is a part of one of the signers of that letter, along with a legal organization called the Native American Rights Fund, which has been in existence since 1970, and Earth Justice are fighting against Enbridge on Line 5 in court. So, and it's pretty well recognized how old that pipeline is. And the governor of Michigan rescinded the permit.
The current governor, the Democrat,
current governor,
Whitmer,
Gretchen Whitmer, in 2020, I believe, 2021, she terminated the easement. So they're operating just like the Dakota Access Pipeline is operating. Enbridge is operating without a permit, without a proper easement. She ordered, then the Attorney General of Michigan went to court. And in June of 2020, even before the governor terminated the easement, she got an order from the court ordering Enbridge to shut down Line 5. And they've refused to do it. And the Bay Mills Indian community, which is one of the signers of that letter to the president, they have also issued an order barring the Enbridge from being on their territory, and they have rights to hunt and fish, which includes under the Straits of Mackinac. So they have what's called, well, I can't even say this, usufructuary rights, which is a legal term meaning that it's a property right that stems from the Treaty of 1836, giving them the right to continue to hunt and fish in the Straits of Mackinac. And so what Enbridge wants to do is they want to put a tunnel. They want to put a pipeline in a tunnel under the Straits of Mackinac, the place with the intense current that would spread any spill far and wide. Michigan and Huron, the Great Lakes flow into each other. So it's never been done before. It's experimental on their part. They obviously don't care about our drinking, or we get our drinking water, and they also don't care about. It's like a crucial waterway for commerce, in addition to being commercial and subsistence fishing and hunting for the tribes. Which is, and also sacred cultural and historical import to the tribes. They obviously don't care. And so they are wanting to put a pipeline in a tunnel under the Straits of Mackinac, which in the Michigan hearing, I want to read to you what this expert said.
You are listening to the Live from the Heartland show on WLUW 88.7 every Saturday morning, and we're talking with Pat Handlin about pipelines and Indian rights and treaties.
Yeah. So a chemical engineer named Richard Kaprizik testified about the serious risk of an explosion in a proposed tunnel, underwater pipeline tunnel, where there would exist a volatile mix of fuel and ignition sources. And the proposed Enbridge tunnel. And so what would be going through the pipeline is called dilbit. It's a diluted bitumen, because the tar sands are so thick and dirty. They have to mix it with things like naphtha, which is highly volatile, incredibly toxic, in order to make it possible to make it flow through a pipeline. So we have like a ridiculous mix of volatile chemicals, toxic oil, in a tunnel that an expert says and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration say, if that thing blew, it would quickly move through Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, and really destroy a lot of lakefront land where fishing is important. It could disrupt, commerce on the lakes. So, and this is a company with a terrible history of spills. So there's this thing called PHMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Safety Materials Administration. It's part of the Department of Transportation, the Federal Department of Transportation. And they keep track of pipeline spills. They regulate them. It's a really detailed database that is very difficult to unfortunately access, but you can access it. So
Well, I think we got, go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say that Enbridge, according to PHMSA, since 1986, Enbridge has spilled almost 7.5 million gallons of diluted bitumen, dilbit, in the 5 states, in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan.
Well, we don't like Enbridge that much. And, as I said at the beginning, Pat, there was a meeting in Evanston, and the article in the Trib said the coalition hosting the event included 350 Chicago Area Peace Action, Citizens Greener Evanston, Rise Up Chicago, Save Our Illinois Land, Extinction Rebellion, and Rising Tide Chicago. And Catherine Bunton of the Chicago Area Peace Action said the event's purpose was to fight to keep watersheds from being poisoned so present and future generations can live. So this is an ongoing struggle. It's probably happening in places beyond Chicago in the United States, the Midwest. Pay attention.
Absolutely.
And you are our expert on pipelines, and we will have you back.
Okay. I'll
Great
be happy
to see
to come
you, Pat.
back. You too, Michael.
Thanks a lot for coming on.
You're welcome.
You are listening to the Live from the Heartland show for the week of October 22nd, and we're going to take a short musical break, and we'll be right back with our next guest, Bill Paige, a former Rogers Parker, living in Thailand, but visiting back here in the States. We're going to hear what he has to say about anything and everything. Be right back here on the left end of your dial. This is Michael James, and we're back with more Live from the Heartland here on the left end of your dial, broadcasting on Saturday morning, the 22nd of October on WLUW 88.7, streaming on WLUW.org. And we're going to bring on a pal of ours who used to be on our radio show more often. He's always been a fighter for freedom of the press and civil liberties. I first knew him when he worked for Playboy magazine, and then he went off to be a teacher at Oakton Community College, where he is now visiting from Thailand in the Black Room, the Black Box Theater Room at Oakton. Good morning to you, Bill.
How you doing, Michael? Good to see you. Good to see you. And it's good to be in here. You know, the last thing I did in this theater was just before I retired in 2010, and we did a very intimate production of Fiddler on the Roof. Anybody that was fortunate enough to see it knows that it was a special moment, and we had a great cast. We had a great. I was in the band part of the time playing mandolin, and then I was Mortka, the innkeeper, as in the play itself. And I mean, I worked hard with a group of older folks like myself, and then all the young kids that were in the theater department here at Oakton. And it was just a great experience. So to come back and see some old friends and walk these halls, you know, it's not where I graduated from, but I was happy to work here and make Oakton a household name.
Well, before you were teaching at Oakton, or after you taught at Oakland, you retired, as you mentioned, and you went to Thailand. And we did have you on the show talking about demonstrations and the politics in Thailand. I'd like to just have you talk a little about why you moved to Thailand, and then we could talk about Thailand a little bit, and then we'll come back to the States, where you were on a kind of a homecoming vacation tour. You've been here in Chicago, you've been in Austin, Texas. I don't know where else you're going, but we'll see what you have to say about what you've seen. So start off with going to Thailand, why, what it's like, and then what brings you back here.
So after I retired, I moved to Texas for about 7 or 8 years, and
I forgot that almost.
started a little project farm, and I gave it a good go, but I realized that farming was maybe not for me permanently as a lifestyle. So changes were made, and one of my options was a friend of mine had invited me to Thailand to be in a band, to play music, and to to just hang out on the beaches and enjoy the warm weather and the good food, and bring my guitar and play some music. So that's what I decided to do. Decided to give that a year, and that was coming up on 5 years ago. So things have been going good. I get to, COVID messed up Thailand just like every other place in the world. The statistic I like to quote to people while I'm here is that in 2017, Thailand had 40 million tourists, 40 million visitors, and this year we're going to have about 4 million. So it's really decimated the tourism business. And that's been unfortunate, but it's going to come back because the country's too beautiful. The people are too nice. And there's like 5 really distinct regions in the country to go visit. So whatever your interest, if it's athletic, if it's sightseeing, if it's temples, if it's elephants, if it's sports and mountain climbing, whatever you want to do, you can find it in this country. And I'd encourage anybody to come on over and give it a try.
Well, one of the things you've been doing over there, and you've even done it while you've been back here on this visit, is playing music. And I'm wondering if tell us a little bit what that's like, who you play with. Are they other expats, or are you embedded now in the Thai community and meeting Thai musicians? Talk a little bit about all that.
So it's all of that. I I play solo sometimes, and sometimes I play with a Danish bass player. And then when we have a full band, we add a Thai guitarist and a Thai drummer to our band. So it's truly international. And there's all kinds of international musicians there from the UK and Australia, Europe, Scandinavia, every place, all different, mostly retired, guys who maybe played music as a hobby, or who played music as a profession, but they still want to keep doing it, as musicians are wont to do. And so we all find opportunities to jam together, to jam separately. I'm lucky that I do play with Thai people. Not every foreigner gets a chance to kind of do that, but I've made friends with Thai people and with other Thai guitar players, and make an effort to learn the language, which a lot of expats don't bother to do sometimes, unfortunately. But it all works out. And then I've had this relationship for the last 6 or 7 years with an autistic youth who lives in Texas, in Austin. And during the pandemic lockdown, we reconnected via Zoom calls and started writing songs together again. And he came up with this name, Joseph Moon, that he wanted to be his stage name. And so we've got an album out as Joseph Moon now. And we've got another one coming out next year that's all recorded and ready to go. He writes all the lyrics, and I put all the music together. And then I take it to this guy that I met, an expat in my town. His name is Ian Nice. And his brother is Steve Harley of Steve Harley's Cockney Rebel. A lot of people will know Cockney Rebel as a big 70s, 80s kind of a glam rock band from the UK. And so Ian played in Cockney Rebel for a long time. Then he was a studio musician in London for 20 years. And now he's got a little recording studio in Hua Hin, where I live. And he and his son, Ronnie, who is a multi-instrumentalist, kind of a polymath. He plays every instrument. He does video recording. He does artwork. He does everything for everybody. And he records, he builds up the tracks. And so Joseph Moon is this interesting collaboration that we've got going on the original music side.
Well, let me ask you, do you have, can you send an MP4 or MP3 of some of the tunes from Joseph Moon? Because we'll use it on the video version of this show, or maybe even the audio version.
Well, anybody can go to josephmoon.com.
Okay.
And it's MOON with 3 O's in Moon. and it's all one word, josephmoon.com, moon with 3 O's. And the music is all there to stream or to download. You can buy a Frisbee, you can buy a baby onesie for your newborn, you can buy a t-shirt or a hat. We got a whole store. I got my whole blog up there where I blog about things that are going on musically. Recently, I just wrote about two of my idols of Chicago music who passed away, Jimmy Sands from the Shadows at Night and Cliff Johnson from Off Broadway. You know, those, I wouldn't be making music. I wouldn't be making music today without those two guys as influences in my life as Chicago musicians, as role models. So, you know, those are the kinds of things you get to think about in retirement. And when you got nothing else to think about, the brain gets to wander where it will go.
Well, Bill Paige, what brought you back to the States this time?
Well, this is the little munchkin that brought me back to the States. My son and my daughter-in-law had a baby not too long ago, 6 months ago. She just turned 6 months. So I figure I better meet my granddaughter. And coinciding with that was my 50th high school reunion from St. Viator High School in Arlington Heights, Illinois, where Ted Nugent went to high school but did not graduate from.
Did you know him?
No, but I knew Ma Nugent. I knew Mary and his mother because she was a columnist for us at the Illinois Entertainer.
Was she a right winger too?
No, she probably doesn't understand what happened. We don't have to talk about that.
Okay. So when you came back here, you had a gig at the Montrose Saloon, which I missed.
Yeah, I played.
How's it been?
Yeah, that went great. It was really the first time when I had the Joseph Moon tracks made. I asked them if they would make me karaoke tracks as well. So they stripped the vocals off of the tracks. So I sang along with the karaoke tracks and played acoustic guitar. And I had a good sound man at Montrose Saloon, and we made it work. We made it sound good. And then I hooked up with my partner, Ronan, in Austin, who's now 16 years old and is as tall as I am and more broad-shouldered than I am. He's working for the Beto campaign, by the way. So, you know, he's on the right side.
Viva Beto. We love him.
And so we went out and we played the Dripping Springs Farmers Market Wednesday afternoon last week and made $100 selling CDs and tips. And then 2 nights later, we were invited to this place I used to play at called the Pedernales Falls Trading Post. And we went back there and did a couple of sets of music and made another $200. So my partner, my young autistic songwriting partner, was very happy about the week. And and now he wants to write a book about, he wants to write a kind of a philosophical tome about how cultural norms have harmed humanity's growth. So that's sort of his overarching theme.
Wow.
I'm like, well, Ronan, you got to think about this closely because you write songs which are pretty culturally oriented. So, you know, you don't want to bite the hand that feeds. So we're working on integrity of thought right now.
Well, Bill Paige, I know you have a keen eye for things going on both culturally and politically. What has struck you while you've been back in the States?
Well, I have to say the sticker shock of inflation certainly is in 5 years is something that, you know, I went into Jimmy John's and bought I shouldn't probably name us.
It's okay.
Went into a sandwich store and ordered 2 sandwiches and a cookie, and it was $30. That set me back a little bit.
Wow.
And I don't know. Looking, coming back, things seem the same. A lot of it seems like an old soft shoe. But from afar, I get hit with the divisiveness and with the Supreme Court issues and the gun issues. And, you know, when I'm in a group of other international people, I was in a group the other night. It was pretty funny. And they were talking about what countries were making war with other countries. and someone looked at me and said, "Oh, you're American. You fight with everybody." And everybody, we got to laugh, but that's kind of the vibe. So, but coming back, to Chicago, to Skokie, where I grew up, Des Plaines, where I worked for a long time, driving around, things just look, they look greener and more grown up and built up and mature. I guess we can use that word. But the things that stay the same are, your old friends and your relationships and the people that are, glad to see you and,
Where Bill Paige, where are you going to vote? Are you going to vote absentee from Thailand? Are you going to vote in Texas? You're going to vote in Illinois?
If
Everywhere.
If I get a chance to vote, I will vote in Illinois, because that's where, that's kind of where I'm registered for everything.
Well, you can actually do that now. I mean, early voting has started happening.
A word to the wise.
Yeah, we need voting, and I want to make a plug here for my sometimes co-host and co-producer Katie Hogan, who was on recently, and she is out in the rural areas, suburban areas. She's got a team of people working, but they need as many volunteers as we can get in the next 2 weeks to help turn out the vote. So you can email Katie at katyhogan70@gmail.com. Well, Bill,
why do you suspect things are so tight? Why is it so close? Why is it even close?
I don't know. I don't get it. And they even say there's the headline on all the news places will make you nuts if you watch them. But the headline was the Democrats seem to have an edge a couple of weeks ago. It's sort of slipping a little bit. I have a feeling that a lot of the polls are not really accurate. I don't think they're getting to a lot of young people. I can only hope that America is not as backward as we have been oft times lately.
Hey, look, one of the things I've learned living in a Buddhist country is that every relationship has an arc. There's a beginning and a middle and an end to everything. So we're just kind of arcing in a different way right now, and it'll. Nothing stays the same too long. I do a song called by Stephen Bruton. Nothing stays the same but the changes, and changes happening every day. So,
well, that's true. It certainly is. What changes are going on in Thailand when you get back? Any elections? They had some demonstrations that were critical of, I guess, the king. And,
first of all, you cannot be critical of the king. That will put you in jail right away. They have this law called lèse majesté.
Maybe they pretended to be someone else.
lèse majesté forbids you from even criticizing the law that protects the king. So it's that's all done and said. But the prime minister, there was a little bit of a controversy recently about, did he take over at the coup and was his 8 years up, or did he take over when they rewrote the Constitution 2 years later and his term is up in 2 years? So I guess the board just decided that he's got 2 more years, and then they have to have some elections and they have to elect a new prime minister.
Bill, before I say goodbye to you for at least today, you wrote a book, some of your writings from back in the days when you were working for Playboy. What's the name of your book? Can you still get it? How do people find it?
The book is all my rock interviews that I did for rock magazines in the Midwest and around the country back in the day. It's called Everything I Know I Learned from Rock Stars, and that's available at Eckhart's Press, and it's also available on Amazon as a Kindle for the low price of $2.99. So and if anybody gets in touch with me on the socials, I'll be glad to send them a complimentary PDF.
Well, give them your website. What is your website?
Well, josephmoon.com is where I get a lot of my messages. And I'm on Facebook as Bill Paige. I'm on Instagram as Bill Paige. I'm on Twitter as Bill_Paige, Paige. Not hard to find.
That's enough of the Bill Pages. Is there
Not hard to find.
Is there anything that we didn't talk that you want to share in our closing seconds here?
Well, no, it's great to be back. It's great to see you. Great to hang out. I'm glad to come back to legal cannabis in Illinois, and we just legalized cannabis in Thailand in June. So there's a whole lot of entrepreneurial things going on there. And as a matter of fact, I'm looking forward to a meeting with the cannabis program administrators here at Oakton Community College, because they've got a 2-year degree program going that they just started a few years ago. And so I'm interested to find out about that and share some of my knowledge with them.
Well, then we'll have you back on, because we recently had a fellow from the Urban Gardens at Loyola, where some of that project was initiated by hemp seed growing, et cetera, et cetera. Okay,
Awesome.
Bill, it's been great. And let me just say to all the listeners out there, you are listening to Live from the Heartland. We want to thank Bill Paige for coming on to talk to us. We'll take a short musical break and we'll be right back with our closeout. I hope you enjoyed today's show. We were really glad to have Pat Handlin talking about pipelines and the potential threat of water being contaminated by broken pipelines under the Mackinac Straits, and to have our friend Bill Paige, who's visiting back home here from his new home in Thailand. And we talked all kinds of things. I want to let everyone know that while we're broadcast on YouTube, on WLUW 88.7 or WLW.org on Saturdays at 9 o'clock, you can always get the podcast or the video. The podcasts are at Spotify and Google Podcasts under Live from the Heartland, and at youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos, you can get hundreds of interviews, and some of them are real good. We want to thank everybody who makes this show possible. We want to thank Josie Stoller, the program director at WLUW. We want to thank everyone at WLUW, our home base, Loyola's wonderful radio station. And of course, we want to thank Katie Hogan, Lynn Orman-Weiss, Tom Clark, Emilio Davis, and our new engineer and co-producer, Hal James. It's been great having you on. Okay, that's it for today's show. We'll be back next week. Have a wonderful week. Keep doing good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. Over and out. All power to the people.